What wisdom do you think the people from whom these artifacts came had that the modern day humans may have lost, or lost in part or in whole? So it's often, as you've spoken about, we see the ancient peoples as lesser, dumber, more primitive. And you've spoken about how they are basically the same.
I think you put them on a bus, all wearing the same clothes, you wouldn't know. That's my feeling.
But I'm sure there's some greater wisdom they had about certain things, as we have greater wisdom about others. Thanks to Einstein, we figured out the curvature of space-time, which they didn't know about. But
they knew quite a lot about astronomy, though. Quite a lot about astronomy.
They stared at the stars.
Yeah, and they measured them, and they made calculations. And when the Greeks went to Babylon, they think, "Hey, man, this is really cool," and they wrote it all down and went home. Yeah, definitely. Well, I think it's a hard question to answer, but one of the things is that they were spared things which have cluttered up the essence of humanity, because I think that the modern adherence to the electronic universe is disastrous for humans, and because it reduces the vitality of the human component. I think it's restrictive in a way that people don't realize until it's too late. Like drugs, if you take drugs now and again, you think, oh, it's fine. Then suddenly you realize you're addicted to heroin. It's a bit like that. People use the electronic world like an addictive drug, and they can't get through without it. And I think this is a very recent thing. But I suppose it's not, I'm a Luddite and say we shouldn't have railway engines and we shouldn't have kettles. But I think one of the things about the ancient world was that people never went anywhere unless they were merchants or soldiers. They never went anywhere. Probably people born and died in a village, and then their children born and died in the village. And they never knew anything about the outside world. Maybe very little. Sometimes there'd be a message. But in principle, they had no idea about other countries, other languages, or how big they were on it. So I don't think they had wisdom in a way that you could type out following precepts will make life better. Because they told lies and they esteemed the truth, and they fell in love and they committed adultery and they did murder and they did all the things. I think in a way the ancient world allowed human beings to behave more naturally than it does now, the world in which we live. I mean, if you do live in a rustic environment or by the sea or you're a fisherman all those normal, real kind of things, then it's probably all right. But most people who live crammed in the cities live a very, very artificial life where the principles which they regard as ineluctably crucial are not ineluctably crucial. They're not one example is this ghastly thing on mobiles where you get a short clip from a real program.
Yeah.
I think it's utterly, utterly wicked. So you have children all over the world who cannot articulate, spell, or make meaning clear using the best, most literary and most beneficial language that's ever been created, which is English, to save their lives. And they use a word. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Right? Like I went.
Like I went.
Yeah. So it's difficult to define that grammatically. Difficult, like I should have gone. Where I went or I should have gone means to speak. Now, how would it be if when we see the verb to go in Sumerian, it actually meant to speak? Where would we be?
I mean, we should probably say that even in that time, there was probably slang, right? It just wouldn't end up written.
There were dialects. There were words that sailors used. For sure, all those things.
But they wouldn't end up in writing.
Sometimes they do.
We have to remember that Cambridge and Oxford speak in a certain way that's proper and formal and very smart. But there's most of the people in bars, sailors have a different way of speaking. They would probably say, like I went. And have emojis and
But the thing is, you have to moderate your vocabulary
Oh, yeah,
if you talk to people of a certain age, because they don't know what the fuck you're talking about if you use language exactly. And the thing which is so exquisite about English is, like with a barrister, you can make a case which is absolutely wonderful because it says exactly what it means and there's no wriggle room. And the conversation should be like that, with no wriggle room. It's not just a matter of spelling, but the basic vocabulary. You know something very interesting? People say they know English or they speak English. Have you ever in your life opened a full-size volume of the Oxford English Dictionary? It's about that. Like this fat, I have a whole set. I love them. So this is it. You take a volume off the shelf and you open the book and you run your forefinger down the various columns of writing. You might have to turn several pages before you find a single word you've ever heard before, because English is unimaginably rich. I grew up in a house where everybody read literature all the time. I had 3 sisters and then a brother, and we all read literature. Went to the library every week, read lots and lots and lots of books. So we all had really good vocabulary. And that's how you get vocabulary. Otherwise you don't, because in conversation, do you want more tea, all this sort of stuff, you don't learn new vocabulary. You have to get it from reading and listening to proper stuff.
We should say the very important aspect of vocabulary, why it's important to know a lot of words and to speak clearly, because those words also define the quality of your thoughts.
Sure.
At the end of the day.
That's exactly right. But I must say, I think it is a pity if, having produced such wonderful languages in the world, that their use is so inhibited.
I think the right way to think about it is the way the British Museum thinks about it. So you're commenting on the ephemeral, on the thing that is in the moment right now is happening. The reality is only a few select things will last 100, 200 years from now about this moment in time. And so we have to sort of think with the big picture perspective and the slowness of time. Yes, in the moment, there's these catastrophes, there's changing ways of speaking, the technology tearing apart the fabric of society. But when you zoom out, you will think about the grand ideas of Einstein, the battle of ideologies with communism and Nazism of the 20th centuries, the bad, the triumphant, the rockets. These humans started launching rockets, going to the moon, maybe to Mars. Those things. And we won't be thinking about emojis and any of that. And in some sense, that's the stuff you're looking at with cuneiforms, is the things that stand the test of time, that are there.
That's true. But I think that language, properly used, is a crucial human tool for communication.
Absolutely, yes.